Welcome to this webinar on collecting various data in our Sensible Assessment Practices series. All webinar topics are designed to support teachers and include building community, beginning with units designed for success, the instruction and assessment cycle, and focusing on sensible assessment practices. This webinar, the start of the school year, will share information that will support teachers as they make informed decisions about their students. Prior to working with students in the fall of 2021 school year, teachers must gather relevant student information from multiple sources. This process will create a foundational understanding used to shape teaching and learning opportunities and build educational success for each student. As the new school year begins, teachers will need the support of administration and parents to gather qualitative and quantitative data to make informed decisions on how best to support all students. Educators will need to work with both vertical and horizontal teams to collect enough varied data to be able to meet the student where they are when they start school. Parents or guardians continue to be valuable resources. As we will discuss, student-specific data will include more than a test score, and due to the unforeseen circumstances of extended school closures, integrating both assessment and non-assessment data will be the key to preparing for this new school year of learning, whether virtually or in person. During the summer of 2020, educators across Connecticut will be reviewing student data gathered from multiple sources to make informed decisions about their incoming students. Vertical teams refers to educators from the current school year, purposely communicating with educators who work with those same students in the previous school year. The educators who work with students during school closures and the summer months can offer insight into their students' strengths and weaknesses, motivation, interests, and state of mind. Horizontal teams refers to in-person or remote educators from the current school year across one grade, purposefully communicating about students. Teams assume the same critical roles and responsibilities no matter how the instruction is provided. The unique nature of the school closure and the varied impact on students necessitates that these teams should include broad representation, allowing for greater, more insightful contributions. Consider including general education and special education teachers, in addition to related service professionals assisting students with disabilities, when making decisions impacting students with individualized education programs or a 504 plan for those who have been referred to special education services. Similarly, involve staff who support English learners to represent and offer important feedback on the needs of English language learners. The most critical assessment that both vertical and horizontal teams should consider is one centered on the student's social emotional health. Students may have experienced trauma, including financial instability, food insecurity, or health issues due to the pandemic. Some children have suffered the loss of a home or the loss of family or friends. As they return to school, they may be experiencing a range of stressful experiences and intense emotions such as anxiety, fear, and sadness that will continue to impact them in predictable and unpredictable ways throughout the year. Therefore, it is important to include school-employed mental health professionals such as psychologists, counselors, social workers, school nurses, administrators, and related service providers on these teams. Communication with paraprofessionals, parents or guardians, and community partners who have critical roles should also be considered. Communication and relationship development is crucial in creating a positive and equitable educational experience for students, teachers, and families. School districts are balancing numerous components for the return to school. Districts are identifying and implementing consistent communication methods, resources available and those that are still needed, requirements for staffing, and technology needs for local and remote learning. Schools are currently developing student and staff scheduling and new safety routines and procedures are being established. The situation in the fall is uncertain, and teachers, parents, and students are uneasy. Schools have been asked to create learning plans for in-person classes, remote learning, or hybrid of both. As these decisions are determined, they need to be clearly communicated to all stakeholders to alleviate concerns and misunderstandings. Creating opportunities for educators from the previous school year to engage with educators for the current school year, particularly when analyzing data, will ultimately support the goals and action plans created. The focus is to improve the quality of teaching and learning and enhance student progress.
Educators already recognize that it is most beneficial to make interpretations based on multiple sources of information. Teachers can obtain quantitative information from EdSite, which is public and local data systems. Established teams will need to obtain some student-specific data from district administrators, such as information from EdSite Secure. Other quantitative measures might include summative assessment scores from past years, interim assessment scores from last year, or district-wide assessments. When examining data, look for patterns by school, by grade, and by student groups to develop interpretations, possible rationales, and action plans. Using multiple sources and types of student information over time will better provide opportunities for more accurate inferences. Educators might utilize an initial instructional unit as a tool to collect other valuable information. Depending on the unit created, teachers can gain information about student experiences during the school closure and summer school to facilitate future lessons and potential interventions. Remember, the type, content, and sources of student information may be different for students with disabilities, particularly those with significant cognitive disabilities. Use student performance on early informal assessments, such as a piece of student writing, a small project, or an assignment to provide feedback and supplemental instruction to help gauge students' relative skill status. Employ a range of regular formative assessment practices that are integrated into lessons given in the first few weeks of school to provide actionable feedback to students. Apply the results of ongoing formative assessment practices as another source of student information to adjust instruction, target incorrect or partial understanding, and to create supports to meet the diverse needs of students. Create flexible, short-term groupings of students based on initial profiles and alter them as necessary. Remember that grades are not as important in the pre-assessment because they are meant to inform instruction. Profiles of student strengths, areas of concern, and actionable details can be used to develop goals and help students progress in a timely manner. Schools might want to administer standardized measures to determine performance levels in a subject area, but doing so at the beginning of the school year will lead to unintended consequences such as misdirected focus or interpretation, incomplete analysis due to the complexity of the concerns at this time, or creating additional areas of concern that may be unrelated. As school restarts, remember to meet the child where they are. It is not beneficial to initially focus on deficits. Rather, identify and build on student current strengths. To create a strong community of students ready to learn, teachers and schools should not initially focus on what was lost while schools were closed. Starting the school year by administering an assessment could potentially work against the building of this new community, resulting in questionable information at this early point in time. It is extremely important that students are not labeled as they return to school through the premature use of tests, and that teachers start the year by focusing on building a safe and inclusive learning environment. The early indication tool is a data analytics and visualization tool developed by the CSDE. It uses statistical methods to differentiate the levels of support that individual students may need to reach academic milestones. The EIT assigns one of 3 support levels for most students: low, medium, or high. For some students with insufficient longitudinal data, the EIT may be unable to assign a support level. The early indication tool is only available on EdSite Secure. Access is initiated through the local education agency's security manager. The primary purpose of the EIT is to allow for timely student intervention by district and school staff, with the ultimate goal of improving student engagement and outcomes. These are suggestions to consider when examining student information. Tools and data resources to gather the data have already been shared, with the emphasis on ensuring multiple sources are used. Not all data analysis can be applied in the same way. Data are typically examined through filters with a specific purpose in mind. Interpretations about students should not be generalized to unrelated areas. Multiple factors influence student learning, such that teachers need to be cautious about their interpretations and decisions based upon them. Preparing graphic representations, as shown in the previous EIT resource slide, often make the information more comprehensible for students, parents, and other stakeholders.
As mentioned, the early indication tool is one source of information that can help vertical and horizontal teams initiate discussion and identify potential student support needs for individual students or groups of students. When examining student information, teachers should prioritize the provision of supports based on the hierarchy. Maslow's hierarchy of school needs is used here to illustrate the relationships for this prioritization. Returning students experience different environments and behavior expectations during school closure. For this reason, parents are another critical source of information, allowing for the identification of necessary supports that may be evident without their engagement. For example, did students engage in distance learning? Does the student have gaps in skills that impeded their participation in remote learning? Did students with disabilities benefit from related service supports? What are the parents' concerns? When discussing qualitative and quantitative data, creating action plans, and developing instructional units, teachers will need to focus on meeting students' basic needs before students are able to engage in learning. When learners have to focus their attention on having basic needs met or avoiding a negative experience, they cannot concentrate on the learning process. Thus, the school year needs to begin with building a safe and inclusive learning environment to support these vulnerable students, making them receptive to learning. Analyzing data is an important first step. However, the real impact on student achievement occurs when teachers create an action plan and then use it to guide instruction, collect ongoing formative data, and adjust teaching to meet the needs of each student. Strong action plans address 4 key questions. What skill or content will I teach? How will I teach it? When will I teach it? What evidence will I collect to know if my students are learning the skill or content? It is crucial to enhance relationships with parents and guardians. Engage parents and guardians to let them know what's happening in the classroom at the start of the school year and beyond. Planning how to regularly communicate with them prior to returning to school will keep them involved and ultimately provide consistent support for students at school and at home. Additionally, encourage parents and guardians to ask questions and share feedback about concerns they have as their child returns to school for either remote or in-person classes. Family partnership is an essential component to the school community and learning process. Implement multiple ways to engage with families. Remembering families may be defined in a variety of ways, including parents, guardians, foster parents, grandparents, or other relatives. Ensuring you're aware of the important people in your students' lives is critical to showing each student that you value these relationships. Consider creative ways to provide opportunities to engage that make families comfortable. Be clear about methods and times to reach out to you to express thoughts or concerns so parents feel validated. Be certain that families who are not speakers of English have access to all information in their native language. Ask for parental assistance to better understand a child's thoughts or actions. Contact can be in the form of an email, FaceTime, Google Duo, text, or a traditional phone call. Determining and using the family's preferred method of contact and communicating consistently alleviates miscommunication and builds partnership. Furthermore, depending on the type of communication used, families can refer back to the information on student assignments, class schedules, and student performance when necessary. In this webinar, there are suggestions for teachers to facilitate the successful return to school for all students in 2021. Teachers prepared with student-specific data from multiple sources, action plans incorporating social-emotional support, and a blueprint for parental involvement will be ready to build a community of learners regardless of the actual learning environment.
The Connecticut State Department of Education continues to provide guidance resources for districts to support the reopening of schools in the fall. The sensible assessment practices for 2021 and beyond, and the plan for reimagining Connecticut classrooms for continuous learning are foundational documents for supporting Connecticut students and teachers. Many of the overarching ideas in this webinar series are drawn from these resources. Connecticut's plan for school reopening in fall 2020, Adapt, Advance, Achieve, Connecticut's plan to learn and grow together, is the third of our foundational resources, and the plan expects districts to provide robust educational learning options to those students who choose temporarily to not participate in the in-school program due to individual considerations. Furthermore, in addition to in-person instruction, the reopening plan also expects districts to be prepared for blended learning or for fully virtual scenarios that may be necessary based on changing health conditions in the community. Therefore, it is vital that students have access to the requisite device and adequate connectivity in-home to participate in virtual learning. The CSDE is making available nearly $100 million in federal funds to local school districts through the CARES Act. Some of these resources will be directed towards those students for whom devices and/or connectivity may be barriers to full participation in virtual learning. To close the digital divide in Connecticut and empower students across the state to learn from home, Governor Lamont recently announced that his administration is launching the Everybody Learns initiative to fill any device and/or connectivity gaps that may still remain. Here is a list of resources specific to this presentation. These are a few more resources we used when designing this presentation. Please contact the Connecticut State Department of Education staff in the Performance Office with any questions you might have. Thank you.